Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And we'll date stamp this as always. It's year 4, blog 25, or in legacy numbers, blog 181, and it's dated the 10th of August 2025. And I think we're really just going to get to the news out the way and talk a little bit about me afterwards, rather than give a sort of like an indication of how I'm feeling at the moment. Best, just to get the what I consider to be just the date stamp out of the way. So I always start off with the war, because it was when I started this blog, the war had only been 2 weeks in the news, and I said that I would continue to report upon it, because the news would sort of like put it on the back burner as you get further on. Who knew it was going to be 4 or so years? But anyway, Trump is open to Zelensky attending the Alaska summit with Putin. Putin is expected to use the summit to set details for a ceasefire, which includes Ukraine giving up 2 eastern regions and its sovereignty to Crimea. Trump admitted some swapping of territories may be essential to the conference talks. Well, that's very nice of him to say that he's happy for Zelensky to come along to the talks. My God, how can you have a ceasefire with only one side present to actually pen it out? I don't get it. It's almost eerily similar to that situation I talked about, where a disagreement happened at work and only one side of the story was told, and the other person was told how it was going to be from now on without being able to tell them their side. Awful. You've got to have him there. Territory swapping, I'm in two minds about it. The whole war started because it was designated what areas were owned by who, and it was a crossover of territory that started the war. And to give territory across then is almost like saying, yeah, start your war and you'll get some ground. There you are. If everybody starts to do that, then it's just going to be chaotic, isn't it? If you do something wrong, you get praise and a prize. You know what I mean? Other than that, I don't really have an opinion of it. Most of the news I don't have opinions on. This particular instance, I just want the war to end, and both sides to be happy about it. But I can see that that's never going to happen. You just hope for the best now, I think, with this one. So we'll turn our attention to the sort of like rest of the world or UK news. So we've got first overnight proms in decades was happened this week. It's been 40 years apparently, and it was called Dark Till Dawn. It's weird about the proms. A lot of people sort of like dismiss the proms a little bit. I was in London in 2007, visiting a friend. They explained to me it's the summer of music. Quite easy to get tickets, very cheap. Would I like to go? I've since been to some film music broadcasts of the proms, and I always remember, although not really our style of music, there would be in the background at certain years the Last Night at the Proms broadcast on BBC Two, and there'd be Land of Hope and Glory being played, and everybody there dressed up and all that sort of stuff, waving their flags, everybody having fun. I must admit I haven't really thought too much about the proms in years and years and years, but I do know when there was no satellite, when there was only so many channels, the proms was definitely something that was shown in our house, for definite. So anyway, the first overnight proms in decades, called From Dark Till Dawn, it went for hours and hours and hours. Some of it broadcast. Has happened. Brilliant. If it's something that works, do it. That's what I say. The fourth heat wave in the UK is expected to start on Monday. Yep, so they've called it officially the fourth heat wave. Temperatures expected in the Midlands and the South to be in the 35 degrees. This is on the back of the storms that happened at the beginning of last week. Storm Floris was happening on Monday. It hit Scotland hard. I was thinking of my friends in Scotland and wondering how they were, and I was hoping that I'd hear something, in some gaming broadcast or some blog, what happened this week in regards to those storms, and hardly anybody mentioned anything. So I take it wasn't that big a thing, but it seems very much like it came and went with the same sort of ways a storm does, and it looks very much like all my friends are okay, so that was great. Next one, Poundland, River Island and New Look have announced 27 closures. So we keep hearing about the high street shrinking and closures. I think I've mentioned Poundland before and River Island this year. These are more, so 27 further closures just to keep their head above water. And you seem to think to yourself, you're just delaying time where you'll be gone. If you haven't now started to go digital, mail order or whatever, then basically you are treading water to the point where you'll be closing more down and then you'll be gone. It's a sad thing. I don't know quite what we can do. We've talked about the foothold on the high street and what it used to be and what it is now and who's to blame and what we can do about it and all of that sort of stuff. Either nobody heard, nobody did anything, or all the ideas were just crap. I don't know, but here we are. And you got to turn around and say the big things like Amazon and that are to blame, but Amazon are only guilty really in somewhat. Well, when I say only guilty, they're one of the many things they're guilty of is becoming so large, having huge profits and not paying much tax. One of the many things, like I say. Another news article, 60 million was paid on an asylum centre that remains unused. So there we are, tax money, 60 million. Thank you very much. Build an asylum. What happens? Nobody uses it. Still not used. Just think of all this housing that we're short of. The hell's going on? And an asylum for, centre. I mean, do we need it? Was there a need at the time? Is it something that can be converted? All these questions come up just because of a headline, really, that I looked at. And there you go. A lot of things about my childhood later on, but here's another one. The Freddo Choc Bar. You remember the little Freddo Choc Bar? Yeah. Freddo Choc Bar. The creator's daughter vows never to buy one after a check on the size and price of the bar in 2025. I had to read my own writing there. It was a very interesting article because it talked about her father, and the idea of the Freddo Choc Bar was to be put in with the 1 penny chews, and it suddenly turned into the barometer of chocolate sales when it escalated to be a 10p choc bar. Apparently now you can buy some as expensive as £1. £1 for a little Freddo choc bar, one singular Freddo choc bar. And the size of them, I remember what the size was, and the size of them now, you'd be embarrassed to put them as hanging on a Christmas tree with Christmas tinsel. Size of them, disgusting. And it's a state of how much we pay for cocoa and all of this sort of stuff and costs, but how it's become from 1p to £1 in such a time. It's scary, really, to me. It's all. I also think to myself, what have little kids got to look forward to other than Hasbro bags with mixed sweets in? There's none of those what we used to have. The blackjacks, the fruit salads. Well, they are, but they're hard to find in the way that I used to say, which was the newspaper counter full of little places where the sweets were, and right in front of them while they were handing over the papers, and kids putting them in little bags for themselves and then presenting them to the shopkeeper and saying 10p please love, and going away, and you had 10p, and if she was really, really bad or really, really good, to be quite honest, you got 11 for 10, because you got away with that extra one that you're putting open that she'd miss out. And if she did count it, you go, oh, sorry, I counted wrong, and you put one back. No harm, no foul. I think we all did little things like that, and it's just sad that I hear about it. I was never a big fan of Freddo choc bars, don't get me wrong, but when you read the article, it's like soul destroying a little bit. And then a couple of rest in pieces this week. Lonnie Anderson, who is sort of out of my childhood, because there was a time where I would be sort of like watching TV after the 10 o'clock news on ITV, and a little program that was imported from America called WKRP in Cincinnati would come on, and it was about a radio show, and it had this DJ, sort of like wacky sort of like DJ that I swear was supposed to sound like he was on drugs or something, right? And Lonnie Anderson was the sort of like big busted, attractive secretary that everybody wanted to sort of like go out on a date on. I was of such a young age, I didn't. I suppose I started to cotton on to the sexual side of things. But that's how I sort of like first saw, I think, Lonnie Anderson, until she married Burt Reynolds, and then saw her in lots of things. But anyway, she died on the 3rd of August, age 79, after a long illness. And that one sort of like got to me, just because it was like, wow, now I'm starting to see things, because I used to watch Taxi and Rhoda and all of this sort of stuff. And I started to see more sort of like slightly adult stuff now of people that starting to die. And then another one came in this week, and this one was, I think, happened earlier in the week, but I didn't hear about it really until I think Thursday. But it might have been because the family didn't broadcast the fact. But there's a Norman Ashley who might not sound anything to you, but he used to play Jeffrey Fourmile in Man About the House. In Man About the House, he was Robin Tripp's brother, but he played Jeffrey Fourmile in George and Mildred, and he was in a number of other dramas. Even as late as Cadfael, which is that monk sort of detective thing set in the medieval times. He pops up now and again in all sorts of stuff. But anyway, George and Mildred was a fave show of mine. Man About the House was a great fave of mine. He died on the 2nd of August, 80 years old, cancer. And it was after a short diagnosis as well. It was like you got it and then bang, he was gone, from what I can tell of the reports. And apparently all the actors and actresses that I think he ever worked with apparently have given a sort of like a very big homage to him, saying how lovely he was on the set and how he couldn't do more for you on the set. That's definitely the implication I got. And he seemed to be that way myself. You know, when you see him on the show and you saw how pompous he was and how snobbish, you just knew he wasn't like that at all. I'm pretty sure he was Brian Murphy level, you know, with his humour and sort of charisma. So another part of my childhood sort of like shrinking that little bit more. And I suppose then we sort of like get to me, and you can probably tell from my tone it's been a difficult, well, not difficult, I'm getting tired. I think that's the thing. And I'm seeing myself sort of ever more a widening gap to things that I used to love doing, like going to the Discords and watching people's channels and all of that sort of stuff. My time is taken away, the world moves on, the world ticks over and keeps going. You're invited to the party but you can't get to it, type thing. And when you do get to the party, you just long that you were able to enjoy it with them. And it's sometimes as well full of good stories when you're bad. And I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you've decided you didn't want to go to the party because you didn't want to upset other people's enjoyment. You thought you being miserable in the corner was just going to cause a problem, so you decided you didn't want to go. That's the sort of place I'm in. Even though there's so many good stories, you know what I mean? I'll mention my friend Steve later on, who seems to be coming out the other side a little bit, pushing himself, doing little bits more, and getting positives from other people for doing it. I suppose what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to do the same, doing different things. You'll notice that I've brought out 5 videos in the last 2 weeks, all in different areas, you know, games and films. And the positives are low from it. And yeah, it just gets to you a little bit. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit then, shall we, about my week. It started off actually on Monday, and it started off, I suppose, quite bad. The week before, I'd sort of mentioned to my boss that holidays were coming up, and that I was starting to get burnt out, and that I'd suggested something to my sister that we're going to try tonight. It's the first night we're going to try it. That helps my sister out because it gives her a night out and a night off. It doesn't help me, but if that works, then basically I'll be learning a little bit more about some of my mother's conditions, some of the things that you have to do to clean her up, all of that sort of stuff. And I'm happy to do that. And anyway, I was about to book a couple of days holiday. I was just going to say, like, I'm going to have a Friday and a Monday off, right? Or Thursday and Friday at the end of next week, right? Because I don't want to do it too close to my 2 weeks off, because that's just adding on top of what you're already doing. What I wanted to do was get my energy back up, possibly get a little bit of time for myself to book something that I could possibly do in my holiday. But somebody got there first. Yes. A person who's also got Christmas off and everything has booked 4 of those days off. Shortly followed, about an hour later, by the other person who's got Christmas off booking the other available day, the Monday, off. Which means that fat chance of me, therefore, booking that. And then my manager decides that he's going to have Monday off as well. So we've got 2 people off on Monday and then 1 person off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I thought to myself, and it's amazing because I couldn't have done anything until Monday because I have to work on the basis of, you know, what's happening with my sister and times and all sorts of stuff. So I suppose there's a possibility of me having a Friday if my manager can get away with having Monday and another person off. Then, you know, I've got to turn around and say, how can you do that? But yeah, it was a bit of a sickener, really. But what could I say? It was me that sort of like delayed to this point. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is very little difference between me working and me being off, right? If I'm working, I'm sitting in front of a computer. If I'm off, I'm still looking after my mother. Whichever way you look at it, I probably gained 2.5 hours in the day to myself out of 8. Because my sister's here till 2:30, and in that time I'd say that's probably what I get. And yeah, it's not a lot, is it, really? You might as well be working 2.5 hours. What are you doing 2.5 hours? Watch 1 film. Possibly prep a YouTube thing for which you'd record the next day. You wouldn't do it in the same day. Get a bit tired. Yeah, not great, is it? So that was Monday, really. So a bit disheartening. Tuesday just went by. No particular thing. Wednesday was quite good. I did some learning with a colleague on how the joiner mover lever process works, and all of the things that we have to do in regards to getting the assets back, which is quite lengthy and requires quite a lot of tools that have macros in. So we've got a Power Automate thing, and that sends the emails out, and we've got a macro thing in a spreadsheet that collates the data and puts it into certain formats and sorts it and eliminates ones that you don't need and ones that you do, because all we get is a big spreadsheet which is called a lever report. It's full of stuff you don't need. You'd be there forever, sort of like pruning it down to what you want. So that's why there's automatic macros that do it. But it's a lot of inputting, copy, paste, format, do the same for the next column, hit this button that says clean, go to the next stage where you have to open up a new tab and put this into here, put these 2 calculations into the next 2 fields, copy those down to the end. You know, it's that sort of thing. And then once you've done that, you've got to do the Power Automate for sending the emails. So this took 4 hours, and it was only supposed to be an hour-long training thing. And he said to me, do you mind carrying on so we can carry on? I said, yeah, it takes me to my lunch, really, 1 o'clock. We got to 1 o'clock and it still needed to go further. I thought it would be another 10-20 minutes. But what happened was it got to 1:45, and my colleague who was training me up got a phone call at 1:45 and said, I've got to go for my lunch. That was a phone call about my granddaddy's in hospital. I'll see you in an hour. But of course, I'd already told my sister I wasn't going on my lunch because I'd agreed that I was going to do this training with this guy. And there was no way that I could do anything that I wanted in the time that was given to me. Because by the time I'd explain it to my sister, by the time I'd set up everything, I'd have half an hour for lunch to do a walk. And when I do my walks, I go shopping. So my time was gone, and all I could do was sit around, really, waiting for him to come back. Then he was in a meeting for half an hour. Then he came back to me, and there was half an hour left of the day. It was 3:30. We finally got the training completed. And we realised at the end of that all we'd done is do the prep and send the emails, and tomorrow was when all the emails come back. You know, all the out of offices, all that I've left the company, all that sort of stuff. So really that whole day was taken up with that. And so I went away a bit sort of like down on that, because not only had I not had a lunch, so that means I'd worked an extra hour in that day. All I'd done is got some type of training done that I won't see again for another month, right? Because it's done monthly. So, yeah, came away a bit despondent and went into Ian Hill, The Ramblings live chat, which is always a highlight of the week. I have so much fun with it. We've noticed that we continue to have fun, even though we have noticed over the last, well, I'd say probably about 3 weeks, the numbers are slightly dwindling. The numbers at the end, the bit where people watch it outside of the live stream, they remain the same, very buoyant. But the idea of a live chat is to have the talk in the live environment. You can't ask a question and get an answer back unless you're there. So what you're actually watching is a recap of something that you have no control over. So of course your whole motivation is that day, that night, that moment. So of course, yeah, it's one of those things where we looked at it at the end and we laughed and joked and said it is what it is, and we still enjoy doing it, and we're going to continue to do it. We've been around now for 68 weeks. 68 weeks non-stop. I think there was only 1 week where he was ill, Ian himself, where that was stopped. Yeah, I even managed to get back after my heart attack and do it on the Wednesday, if I remember rightly. So, yeah. So we had a great time on Wednesday. The people that were there had a great time on Wednesday. We noticed the numbers dwindling but didn't care less. Like I say, the things are going on in the background. People are having holidays, you know, other stuff going on YouTube. The YouTube algorithm not advertising it, all sorts of stuff that you get with that, and you just put it to one side and go, but did you have fun? And the answer to that was yes. So that was great. And Ian is such a great supporter of me, and it's one of those things where if I didn't have that support, if I wasn't talking to Ian, I would be lost. I really would. There's been less talk from other areas that I used to have now closed, pretty much closed to me. A shame. And yet I don't feel, you know, I feel bad about that, but possibly because I tried to give as much positivity when I was doing those things for other people. Do you see what I mean? That you hoped that when you were in a negative situation, they'd buoyant you back up, but that never happened. They just took it would seem. But there you go. We moved to Thursday. I collated those emails that I talked about, and I prepped for 5 reports that my manager required. This was really good, actually. This is another little highlight. The program I use has what they call apps and widgets, just like a phone, where you can take tables and run filters and turn them into sort of like little picture graphics, like speedometers and charts that give you things like counts, you know, of stuff, or you know, that needs to be fixed, or graphs of highs and lows and scatter graphs and all sorts of stuff. And he wanted 5 reports doing for the dashboard that gave specific information, like laptops that have not been seen in 90 days for laptops only, given by our one specific vendor, that for some unknown reason has still got a user assigned to them. I mean, 90 days, got a user assigned to them, haven't signed in. That gives you a count for which something needs to be rectified with, whether it's sending an email to the manager to say, oi, what's going on with your user? Are they on long-term sick or whatnot? We don't know. It's that sort of thing. So that was really good. So I started to prep myself for that. I created a dashboard area for myself. I created 5 separate reports and named them. And then all I had to do was think about the filters that are required and the tables that are used to get the information that I needed, which would have been done on Friday. Then we got a late text message that I didn't pick up upon until Friday from my mum's hairdresser saying, please give me a call in the morning. I missed it. But Friday comes along, and as you know, usually my mum gets her hair done, and I got a call during my daily meeting. So it was about 9:45. My sister was already getting my mum prepped to go and get her hair done when we got the call from the hairdresser saying, I've been trying to get in touch with you, apologies, but my granddad died overnight, so I'm not going into work today, so your mum's hair appointment has been cancelled. For which it was a bit depressing, but my God, to have the news that your granddad's just died, that's far more thinking, in regards to I hope you're well. We can get over my mum. My mum is all about familiarity, looking nice for the rest of the week and all of that sort of stuff. You've got a loved one that's died. You have to look at these things like that. So that was the end of that, really. And all that happened, really, other than the family shop that I did, which was difficult because with the council tax paid at the beginning of this week, there was literally a tenner left, and the shopping on Friday came to £83. So the rest of the money came from me. So yeah, I paid that, got back, and then I started to do some prep for the blog. And the reason for that was I was thinking I might do a stream in the evening about playing some games, let off some steam. Do you know what I mean? By taking it out on alien little bastards. Do you know what I mean? With the old joystick. But unfortunately, Saturday was the same start as always, looking after my mum, going on to the ITV and other channels to pick up upon programs that I like to watch. So I was also trying to do some blog prep. So I was listening to things like Tecmo and Through the Lens, not Through the Lens, This Week in Retro. All of that sort of stuff is what I was trying to get across. And it's like I say, sometimes it's a little bit difficult. Because you've also got to do it. You've also got to do it the following day, because people might bring out stuff that night or in the morning. So I started that off, and I completed the 5 reports for my manager, and I did a handover of some of the work that I did this week to my manager, even though he won't read it till Tuesday. Saturday was lovely because I took my mum out in a wheelchair out into the streets. So we got some fresh air in, went to the park. We couldn't go around the park because it was so bumpy on the grass, but we walked up to my old school in the town I lived in, started talking about the differences to how it was when I was at school. And my mother did remember me going to school sports day and trying to do the 400 metres and the long jump and javelin throw and all of that sort of stuff. and we noticed that the swimming pool was gone and it was replaced with a broken double-decker bus, which has been turned into a library, and all the solar panels on the roof to make them self-sufficient when it comes to energy. Yeah, we talked a lot about changes, and I wheeled her back and did more blog prep, which is where we get to hear what I watched last night will be explained in the area that I talk about in regards to what I watched this week. But there were a number of streams on last night. Unfortunately, my mother's health was so bad this week that her going to bed changed from going really early to really late. And so when I actually finally sat down, most of the streams were finished. There was a couple that weren't. So I'm happy to say that I got to see some of them. Other ones I just missed again. And those ones that I'm missing again seems to be a regular occurrence. And, you know, I almost think to myself, might as well not watch that channel anymore. I'm totally a ghost to that now. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you can probably tell from my demeanour that I've not enjoyed the week, but I'm alive. I'm looking after my mum. It's positive. We're eating okay. I'm cleaning up as best as possible. Did some work in the garden. I've mowed the lawn, washed, got some water onto it to try and encourage growth. Got rid of the dead heads on the roses. Burnt a few weeds with a propane gas burner wand thing, and did some spraying of my vinegar concoction, which comprises of white vinegar, 10%, 5 litre bottle, with a little bit of dish soap, fairy liquid, and salt. Mix that up, spray it all over your weeds on your driveway. Hey presto, they'll wither and die. Fantastic. So I'm going to give my shout out shortly. I'm just going to take a small break and just make sure my mum's okay. And I'll be back very, 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 very shortly. It'll mean nothing to you. I'll tell you like that. And I've sort of stepped back in, and it's only been sort of 2 minutes since I've gone away. Because I thought back at what I've been saying, and it does come across so sort of low and negative, and I don't really want to always give that away that that's how things are. I've always said to people that I may feel like that now, but I probably won't feel like that in an hour or two, or possibly even tomorrow. I wake up and I try and do a reset of myself, and I say, you're still alive, keep going, you're doing well, there's a purpose, and you're utilizing that purpose, so keep going. It's just sometimes when you're doing a reflection in a diary, it's always the negatives that come up first and never the positives. Unless you're writing it on a daily basis, you've just been in from the cinema or something like that, you go straight upstairs, you write your diary and you talk about that film or something. That's when there's a joy. But if you're doing a weekly reflection, it's sometimes hard to start on those positives. So I think we have to take that into consideration as well when we're listening to my blog. I thought sometimes about making the blog something that I continue to do, but not actually broadcast to people for scrutiny. So the very reason that I do it is that it gives people an indication of where I'm at, and that I'm still alive even. If I've done a blog on Sunday, well, he must be still awake then. Otherwise, things would become very, very quiet for me. There would be very little out there that would say, haven't heard from him in a long time, what's going on? Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes, though, that wouldn't even happen. I'd have just gone out the back door without anybody noticing, and and when I'm out that door, I'm out of sight, out of mind, and gone. And that's how I think most of the time is how things will happen when I do leave YouTube and do leave this world, if you see what I mean. But anyway, let's get the shout outs out of the way, shall we? Because I always love the shout outs. Those are the people that have left a comment, put a like, possibly. They might have put up a like, they might not have done. But have had at some point in the week the idea that I think I'll post a little text to say how much I was in their thoughts at the time that they were writing. So that's great. So they're not in any particular order. The users that left a comment this week are Muckman-Movies, Jambon, Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Denny, Street Gaming Part 2, Martroid, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, and Wee Bob Art. Like I say, every single one of those. In fact, actually, I think it's right in this particular instance. I think... No, it's all but two. All but two have got a channel. And I think you'll find that pretty much of those ones, they're all listed in my description for this blog. So if you're ever wondering what sort of work they do, please go and have a little look. That's for definite. I definitely want my friends to grow. I'd love to see them go past the 1,000 mark. I'd love to see me go past that. But what I'm saying is, from my personal point of view, I think about them and I go, do you know what? You deserve to be up that little bit higher. I'll mention you in my blog this week. But only if I watch something, and genuinely, I have. So there we go. So we're going to now approach the questions. So I'm going to start that in just a second. And on to the comments, and in no particular order, the first one comes from my friend Jambon. I actually contacted him during this week because I reminded him that I've actually bought my Pinfest ticket, arranged with my sister that it's on a Saturday, so there should be no problems. And we're going to also go for a meal at lunchtime to a pub. So that's really something to look forward to, and that's given me a great boost. So there are some positives, you see. And anyway, he's put, let's read it out. Hi Del, hope you are doing okay. Listened to the vlog earlier in the week, but forgot to leave a comment. And now I forgot what the comment was, so sorry. So I shall do a last minute question, if that's okay, please. And you've not been asked it before. He always says that, you know. Lots of us older gamers get annoyed by predatory microtransactions and the various psychological tricks used these days to get folk, not at least children, addicted and to spend more money. So, do you think we go a little too easy on the old arcade games, given that they were often designed to be coin guzzlers first and foremost? Take care, sir, and all the best. You know what? Yeah, it's a valid thing. But I always remember when I was a kiddie that I'd probably just go and bother my mother once, or my nan usually, and just say, I've spent my 20 pence. Can I have another 20 pence, please? And sometimes it would be, no, bus is here in a couple of minutes, we've got to go. Or other times it would be, yeah, go on, knock your socks off, go and have another play. And basically, I'd go and play the game. There were some pinball tables there, but I tended to find that I wasn't very good at those, and the money would go quicker than I was playing with the arcade games. Usually because the arcade games had been standing there for a few weeks, and I'd gone to them each week. And the pinball machines, sometimes they looked a bit beaten up, and I thought to myself, they don't look very reliable. I like to watch people play those rather than actually play them myself, and it's only in my adulthood that I've grown to respect playing pinball machines, and I really really love them now. It's amazing, really. And anyway, when the fair came along to our town, I'd already saved up my money because it always came at the same time each year, which was which was the end of September, beginning of October, and I'd saved my money, and I always went by myself in my later life, and once that money had gone, it was gone. So I used to go around, loving going around the fair, seeing people having fun, going into each of the arcade huts, because there were several of them, and seeing what the games were, and then making a mental note on which ones they were and how much they were, because they were all different prices as well. The older ones were 10 pence, and the newer ones could be up to £1 later on. And I knew exactly how much money I had in my pocket, and I'd eke it out. Now, the fair was there for 3 days. Well, it was there for 3 nights, should I say. Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. Saturday morning they were gone. Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning they were assembling it, because it took up quite a bit of the town centre, split into all sorts of parts. So I never had anybody to go, oh, get some money out. And I never had any in the bank. So I knew exactly where it was going. And all through my gameplay life with computers and consoles was the same thing. Save up, save up, save up, buy. And because there was no internet in those days, nothing to request me to pay extra money for. So I suppose I started my gaming with a lot more control than people that have grown up in the millennials. And they've had that presented under their nose from the moment they've started playing games. And that must be therefore, a biggie for them. And I've heard horrible stories of kids taking their parents' credit card and putting it in and buying these microtransactions, and suddenly finding they've spent hundreds and hundreds of pounds on crap, basically. I've never known anybody other than fruit machines, gambling machines, go that much in the red because of a video game, right? Space Invaders, Galaga, all of those. I've never known them go, this guy stole £500 of his parents' money to go and play Mr. Do, say. But I dare say it could have happened, but it just wasn't in the news that much. And I didn't live near the seaside where the big fairs and things were on 24/7. And so I can imagine the enticement of the money to actually go on those arcade machines and not have any money. And where do you get that money from? And it must have been therefore much higher in those permanent places. So I can only imagine, yes, it is there, matey. And for me, I think I was a bit more level-headed, and the opportunity was less. I know that I definitely bothered my parents and grandparents for money to play on a machine when it was in a cafe, when it was in a taxi rank, when it was in a health centre, when it was in a pub, but not so much Banbury Fair, and definitely not with computer games until the internet was fully established into the thing it is now. I hate them. Microtransactions is something I avoid. I remember starting to play games on my phone, loving it to bits, and then all of a sudden there was this microtransaction going on, And to be quite honest, the only people that were winning are the people that were spending more and more money on it, until you got to the point where the microtransactions made it into a full AAA type title. 60 quid. It was a 69 pence game when you bought it. After 2 months and you getting quite addicted to it, it suddenly turned in that you'd spent 69 quid. Where did that go? All of a sudden, and it's scary, isn't it? So yeah, I don't think we think about the arcade side of things as being something where you stole. It happened. I know it happened. I've seen stories and read stories and things, and it's been on the news. But I don't remember too much of that in the early 80s. But I think in America it did. Big time in America. And I should think it happened a lot in our seaside resorts, for which I wasn't a part of. Thank you very much for that question. Absolutely brilliant and on topic for what I do in my blog as a thing, where I'm always into games, films, TV, soundtracks. So, salute my friend, and I moved to my friend Denny. And I managed to speak to him during the week. I actually called him because there was a time where I actually found I could do it. And he actually mentioned that he was off. So it was easy for me to call. But it was only a half-hour call. Had to attend to my mother straight away. It's one of those things where I don't really have the time until about 9ish. But when it comes to Wednesday and the helping Ian Hill out and doing, being a collaborator with him, and that's how we call it now, a collaboration. I have to leave probably once in that 8 to 9 slot to go and make sure my mother's okay, and then after 9 o'clock I'm gone for a bit longer, where I'm actually putting her to bed. So he's been very, very good to me about that. I'm sure it pisses a lot of people off that there's only one person there when they're expected to speak to two. But it is for short periods of time, so it's great. Anyway, he starts off his message to me as, "Hiya, mate. Nice to catch up again last week. One subject we agree on is the need to cut back on physical media." Yes, we talked about the costs and where our money's going at the moment. So this is about buying 4K discs, Blu-rays and so forth. So much coming out of late. Yes, it seems almost every week there are some A titles that are in deluxe packaging. September is an absolute packed month, and my wallet is already groaning. Yeah, because you pre-order these things and they suddenly turn up, and whenever you see, say, one of my blogs and you look at what's turned up this week, just total it up. If I've got 5 titles, they are not probably 5 titles that cost a tenner each. Double or treble that, and then you'll see how much you spent in that week. And it's quite scary sometimes when you think about it. Thunderbirds, he says, is to be released on Blu-ray. Wonderful box set with tons of extras, but it's £89, and it has me thinking twice when there's a chance it's going to be on 4K as well at some point. I'd assume it's been restored to today's current standard already. I would say, yeah, you're pretty much on topic with that. They intend to release a steelbook of the first 2 episodes on 4K, so that tells you it's ready to go once sales of the Blu-ray edition dies down. Yeah, so they've got their 89 quids in. This has rolled in. Loads and loads of dosh. Got 2 steelbooks in 4K out. Got their doshing on that. All that restoration then into a 4K box set. See what I mean? Just turns itself around. Yeah. It's a never-ending circle, I have to say. That brings me on to Blake 7 Season 2, which is released on November 10th. The trailer looks absolutely sensational, and the updated special effects look great. Word has it, he, and I take it this is the person that's doing the special effects and so forth, he started work on the effects for season 3. Let's be honest, all 4 seasons have been cleaned up and regraded with new effects already. No way could you do all that work between each release. Yes, because it's been less than a year and all of a sudden they've got another box set ready to go with special effects. They would have started that at the same time as the first one. I agree with that. Don't know whether you're into period dramas, but there's a new adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo airing on You and Drama. This is a satellite or Freeview channel called You and Drama. I actually heard Naga, what's her name? Naga Vincetti, something like that. She's on Radio 5 and she's on BBC Morning. And she was talking about hits and misses for the week. And the Count of Monte Cristo was listed on there, and they didn't give it a thumbs down, and they said it wasn't a must watch. They all three in turn turned around and said this is not a must watch. And their answers were a bit varied, but most of them were the writing, the script, and the interplay between the actors and what they were saying was predictable. Naga tried to explain it and say, I heard somebody say a line and I knew what the other person was going to say before it actually answered. It was so predictable. And I have to say, yeah, when you've done so many adaptations of a classic story, and you know it fairly well, that's probably going to be the case even for the most modern ones. So I do totally get that. Anyway, you say it's an 8-episode lavish production. As a fan of Alexandre Dumas, I can fully recommend it. Note, this is not anything to do with French adaptation, which was released to cinema last year. It was nice to spend a couple of hours with Ian and yourself on Wednesday, yes, because you turned up on Wednesday, talking about Salem's Lot. It was suggested that there was a 3-hour cut. This is of the new version of Salem's Lot, by the way, which makes sense as the film was so disjointed in many parts of the production. Yes. So, yeah, we were talking about Salem's Lot because we were talking about Stephen King. And we turned into Salem's Lot because I think Salem's Lot is, for some of us of a certain age, our first TV adaptation of something that Stephen King's turned from novel to film or mini TV series, you know, like a 2-part blockbuster or whatever. And then we had things like Christine and all of that sort of stuff, Carrie, Cujo, you know, a number of them. And I guess that, you know, Salem's Lot is up there. And when you look at the modern one and you look at the old one, and you sort of suddenly come away with the new one of saying that it's not very good. That's what I'm trying to get at. You ask yourself, well, why was the first one so good? And we start to backtrack and go over the production values and the actor's ability to portray a character that you cared about, the music of the piece, that sort of thing. And the new one, I've seen it, and I came away entertained, but it was I actually did turn around and say, nowhere near is it as good as the first one. The first one's an absolute classic. And we ask ourselves the question, why? Of course we ask ourselves that question. My ideas is that most of the time somebody who's done it has been through a commission by the company to bring out an old franchise. And the second one is it's a fan. and they think to themselves that a fan is going to be the best person to direct it because they know the beats of the actual program itself, and they also know what worked and didn't work when it was first broadcast. So it makes sense. No, this is not anything to do with the new French adaptation. Yeah. So you continue. I'm currently working on a YouTube short. Yes, you heard me. I'm working on a YouTube short. Very similar to what Ian does on his channel. This is my text adventure channel and something to release between the bigger videos. Do you manage to check out Irwin Allen's Swiss Family Robinson from the links I made you? So I'm just going to reverse back a little bit here. Great that you're going to be doing some shorts. The shorts we're talking about are the 1 minute shorts that YouTube think really boost your channel. He wants to go in and say something about card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the disc, and bang, you're out the door. So I wish you well with that, matey. So you're going to do this on your text adventure channel. Remember that my friend Denny has got 2 channels. He's got the Control Center and another one. I think just called Denny or Traveler's Walk or something. And you can see the links in my description anyway. But I just look at it that if it's something that you enjoy and you want to do it, do it. I couldn't think of where I could put my shorts, so I'm doing a slightly longer version and doing my own thing rather than just list 5 cinema posters worth of films, you know. So yeah, it's horses for courses though. So you continue. Do you manage to check out Irwin Allen's Swiss Family Robinson from the links I sent you? Yes, I did. Thank you. And it was interesting because it was one that I'd forgotten. I mean, I remember all the other Irwin Allen stuff, Land of the Giants and all of that sort of stuff. And even the films Earthquake. So that was kind of interesting. You then continue. So question for this week. What is your favourite Alexandra Dundee production for either television or cinema? Now that's an interesting question because it's period drama. You said you didn't know whether I'd like it or not. I do. But when it comes to this particular writer who wrote some cracking stuff, because he did The Three Musketeers and he did Man with the Iron Mask and a number of others. There was one that sort of like stuck out, and it was Count of Monte Cristo from 2003, which is in 2 parts, one called D'Artagnan, one called Milady, which I have on Steelbook. I said I'd never buy it, but I was just too enamoured by the fact that it looks a great set. It's in a red box, it's gorgeous. So I really did enjoy that. But I do know that people get turned off by certain stuff. That cat, I'm surprised it's still there with the smell of floor varnish there, but there you go. So my question for this week, what's your favourite family Alexander Dumas production for location or for cinema? And I think it would be Milady and Count of Monte Cristo as a double pack studio release. It wasn't that expensive. It was in the 60 quid bracket. And I got great enjoyment out of it. But I have liked all the others as well. So that's pretty good. So otherwise, the Count of Monte Cristo, I've enjoyed The Man with the Iron Mask more than the Count of Monte Cristo, to be quite honest. They're always an event for me. I've really enjoyed them. I like that sort of like medieval look. I think it's great. Wishing you well, my friend, and best wishes to you and your mother. I'm off again this week, so we'll catch up. But that's something I'll really look forward to. Thank you so much. That's absolutely brilliant. So, let's move on. I paused for a second there because I noticed that I was getting a few jumps. I don't think it's come through on the recording because it doesn't actually record them as frame skips. But I was thinking about my answer as well, just while I was checking my hardware, and I thought I didn't really give a great answer to Denny. I mentioned the two that I like, and those were the ones that came out in 2003. I've got the steelbooks of those. They were bloody expensive. But I've seen the Three Musketeers, Four Musketeers, the Fifth Musketeer, D'Artagnan, the Man with the Iron Mask, Count of Monte Cristo, all as BBC productions, ITV productions, film productions, ones with Oliver Reed in, ones with, so many. And I've always said that the 70s ones were the ones that I enjoyed, and I still do. I hope that gives a bit of a more rounded answer, because as much as I love Eva Green in those new ones, I think it was supposed to be a trilogy, and there's only two. And I don't know whether there's going to be any more, because it was 2003 when those came out, and it's 2005 now. Pretty sure I heard it was a trilogy. Might be wrong. But the 70s ones really knocked my socks off, because I love period dramas. If I haven't given that impression before in the past, I apologise, Denny, but I love period dramas. I think they're fantastic. And I watch a number of things like Napoleon and Waterloo and all of those sorts of things. I think they're great, and it comes probably from a lot of the monster flicks that I saw as well. They were all set in a period of around the war, before the war, 18th century, that sort of stuff. And I used to watch things like the Tudors and Elizabeth I and all of that. So I've loved all that. So salute, my friend, and I love the fact that we'll get caught up. Could definitely do with a longer chat, possibly a little bit about things that are going on with me, even though I love listening to what other people's lives and what's going on with them. I'm not tending to find I'm venting much about what's going on in my own life, because I try to keep things as light as possible in this blog, and I hope that comes across. So we'll move on anyway to my next friend, and it's Ian Hill, the Ramblings, who I've already talked about. Brilliant guy, fantastic. If you haven't subscribed to him, I don't know what's wrong with you. My God. Anyway, he's put, this is what it says: "Hi Del Boy, hope you and your mother are okay and managing to cope with the daily routines. It's those routines that keep things stable when you are a full-time carer." Yeah, it's sort of like a routine for the toilet, a routine for getting a cup of tea, a routine for the meals, routine for pad changing, a routine. It just goes on and on and on, along with the duties that you need to do yourself, which is washing and cleaning and all of the rest of the stuff. It's just never ending. I've had a very mixed kind of week. On the downside, I have on some days had a total lack of energy and headaches, so not felt good. However, other times I've been okay. On Wednesday I was able, as always, to do our weekly live stream, which I thank you for. Absolutely brilliant. And I know exactly what you mean. My energy levels are just now to the point where the sleep, along with the sleep deprivation, I'm finding it very hard to concentrate, keep my eyes open, read things, read it out in a entertaining way, with a voice that's not so one tone. So I hope I do that. It's coming across that I'm doing my best in a very hard time for myself. Today I went to the doctors for my yearly big diabetic checkup. I managed to walk there and then into town. I thought I would check out the charity shops. I found nothing. Now, this reflects a trend I've seen on YouTube, where YouTubers find nothing. I don't know how to explain it. Eventually, I just wanted to get back home. It took me a long time. I felt worn out. I don't want to go out now for a very long time. There's nothing there for me. I will continue to use World of Books and Music Magpie to add to my physical media to my collection, and the Arrow and the HMV sales. Yeah, don't blame you. I haven't been to Bicester now for about 4 weeks, so that's when I used to go to the charity stores. And to be quite honest, I'm looking forward to the next one. I usually pick up something. Period drama, just one odd thing for 20 pence or £1. Just fun to look on the shelves, to be quite honest. But it's hard pickings, I have to say. As usual, I've been watching more films. There were some I totally disliked and could not get on with. Top of that list was another remake of War of the Worlds. I found it unwatchable, complete and utter rubbish. Now, you sent me a download of Tron, a film I know many love and enjoy. I found that totally unwatchable too. Maybe it's because I'm not a gamer. It just left me cold. I had to switch it off. I wanted a proper film. You did send me a children's film, a more children-like film called Explorers. At least that felt much more fun and not a waste of time. Thankfully, I watched a film called Tora 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 from 1966. Brought back memories of my dad. Love seeing both sides in the conflict about the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. I've even got to admit the film score was good by a certain composer we don't mention. I have no idea what you're talking about. A certain composer? I don't go on about that particular composer too much, do I? Maybe I do. Not sure. But he is damn good, isn't he? Really. Yeah. When it comes to War of the Worlds, you've given that me as a job to do, to watch. That'll be happening, I think, today. When it comes to Tron, that was my sort of like wild card in the two films that I sent you. Explorers is more like a Stand By Me about, young teenage boys just reaching that certain age, but it's to do with space. And so from that point of view, I thought you'd find it entertaining. Stand By Me in space, in other words. It talks about kids in the summer holidays, and what they got up to and the excitement of building a spaceship and all that sort of stuff. It was good. I enjoyed it. But Tron was the wild card because it is a bit about gaming. But if you do look at it from a point of view where there's a whole language to learn, the visual effects at the time, the soundtrack of the time, it's a 1982 Disney film done with state-of-the-art ways of doing special effects. Most of them not CGI based. It's too early for that. But done with that Walt Disney flair that we saw in the 70s. Yes, it is about gaming. From that point of view, the characters, they do have interaction with other characters, but I do totally get it. It's a bit stilted, a bit sort of one-sided, and along with a story that you might not understand because it talks about the microcomputer at the center of the machine, the master controller, being the person who controls that. But the games were very, very entertaining. In fact, they turned into an arcade machine. So I really enjoyed it. And the reason it was a wild card is because they did the second Tron about, let me think, 7 years ago, maybe. A new one called Tron Ares is coming out. So I thought it'd be good for you to get caught up. I was wrong, but then again, it was a wild card, so it doesn't really matter. My question this week is: have you ever stopped watching a film, or even managed to get to the end and felt you never want to watch that again? All my best, mate, and have a reet grand time. Let me have a swig of Coke while I think of that question. Yeah, have I ever stopped watching a film? I've never walked out of a cinema, really, that I remember. I've watched things to the end, probably because I'm a tightwad. I will watch it to the end, just to know I've got my money's worth. But there have been stuff that I can't watch anymore. Manimal as a TV series is a definite. But you have to give these things a chance. If you don't give them a chance, then you're basically saying you're put off by the critic that told you about it. I gave that as a wild card because it was up to you whether you could watch it or not. There was no sort of like, you must do this. It was something that is fun to watch because you've got a person that thinks that you might get enjoyment out of it and you haven't seen it before. So yeah, I tend to find that I enjoyed giving you that film, and no regrets from me, especially when a third film is about to come out on it. So I'm just going to check on my mum now and then be back. It's one of those things where it's stifling hot in here as well. So I'm just going to... Can't see the mouse pointing, very well. So I'm just going to be back in just a moment. And we move on to Steve's Gaming Part 2. My friend Steve, who I have to do my normal salute to. Hello, mate. How are you? No, it's not that one. It's you fucking bastard, ain't you, you little shit. Anyway. I believe he's doing a little bit better now. He's still on a break at the moment. Although, that's not quite true. Because he is doing some streaming. But I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So he's put, hello, Del. Enjoyed the blog last week. Thanks for that. I hope you and your mum are managing things and it's not too much of a strain to you. I also hope your week was better than mine. I've had a stinker. In fact, this entire year has been bad. Things after bad things. And at times I thought I should just walk down to the South Pier and jump in it. You and me both. I'll be holding your hand. I don't think I could have foreseen 2025, and I'm still living it now, but you did let me know an insight into yours. There's no competition on whose is worse. All I do know is that I've seen the power of love behind you, Steve, from a lot of people that love the fact that you comment every day in Discord, that you bring out stuff, that you're a major talent at even writing games, and I don't have any of those things. So in many ways I'm slightly jealous, but there we go. Yes, it's been that bad. I visited my mum today and that didn't help. She's getting worse and her memory is really bad. Anyway, let's not end on a sour note. I've had a go at streaming, although I'm terrified of it. I'm trying to fight my fear and will continue to do some small ones. I look forward to your next stream, and I understand how hard it is for you to find the time. I just ask, if you do find the time sometime to do a stream, give us a warning in Discord so we can go watch. Oh, one more piece of bad news, sorry. Jim Lovell has passed on. What a real legend he was. Gemini and the Apollo astronaut, and he got Apollo 13 back home safe. Really sad that he went to the moon twice and never set foot there. He made it to the ripe old age of 97. Going back to the streaming bit, actually the streamings this year have never been scheduled. They've been at my lowest point. Each time I've been so upset that I've decided I'm going to do a stream. And if someone comes along, brilliant. I'll have a chat with them. Be absolutely fantastic to do that. Because it shouldn't be a call like that to have a chat. You know, I just thought to myself, the only thing I can do is play a game. And if someone comes along and I can have a chat, great. Because I never call somebody up at 11 at night, say, and say, do you want to chat? So my only outlet is to stream. And that was taken away from me, believe it or not, this week. YouTube sent something to me saying, we need something from you to prove who you are, for you to be able to continue to stream and use advanced features in your YouTube channel. And you don't have enough community hours to let you have those things. So please give us a scan of something. Now, I thought, this is strange. I've never been asked this before. And I looked into it, and it was a legitimate source. It actually was in my Google. It was in my account, saying that it needed this bit of information. It needed my driving license. And then I looked a bit more into it, and it's to do with this act that's come in. Remember, I was talking about this act where you have to prove that you're 18 and all this sort of stuff. So they actually took my streaming rights away. And I put my driving license in, and 48 hours later, they came back and said, you're okay now. So that's all right. But for a time, again, something taken away from me. And I was going, my God, can anything else happen? You know, I was in this disarray. And if I feel like I'm going to stream, then I feel like I've got to do something where I've got a plan of what I'm going to play. So I tend to just put something on Steam and then play something. It's not like I'm doing something like Alan, say, Steve, you know, our mutual friend Alan Mainmeister, that on a Sunday will go, right, I'm playing everything Amiga. You see what I mean? If I was to put my Amiga on and put my Steam thing on and choose a game, I'd probably be bored of it in 5 or 10 minutes, and then there's no one to actually suggest another game for me to play. So, yeah. And it's very difficult to sort of like state I'm going to do a stream. So it's very, very hard for me to do, and why I sometimes looked at the way that you're going with your streaming, and I think it'll work wonderfully for you. I don't think it'll work equally as well for me. Not with my state of mind. You need to have that buoyancy, I think. And I don't want to end on a sour note, but that's just where I'm at the moment. I'm not looking forward to anybody streaming. I'm not looking forward to going to anybody's real channel and watching people chat and having fun, because I'm not having fun myself. And I need to get out of that. But that might mean that I've got to battle something on my own and get over it and learn from it. But we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to get to your questions because I don't want to be on a sour note. Question 1. Sticking to the space theme. Which astronaut was your favourite, if any, and why? Oh, Gus Grissom was yours. My God, yeah, you are. You are talking about some heroes. Well, we all know Neil Armstrong, don't we? And Buzz Aldrin. Jim Lovell, we know them. And was it Jack Swigert? Is that his name? I'll tell you who my heroes were, if we're talking just NASA. Because if you ever do go to the space museum, you know, if you go to Mission Control ever there, they've got a heroes and villains of the space race, and there are villains, people that didn't want it to go ahead, you know, who did everything they could to starve money. But you learn an awful lot just by watching Hollywood movies sometimes. But I love space so much that I went there when I went to even when I went to Florida, you know, and visited there. But I tell you what, the most intriguing person was, I think, a guy called Gene Kranz. You'll have to sort of like correct me on the name, but he was in mission control during Apollo 11. And he was part of the team that sort of like gave go no go for launch, which is a famous saying in in Apollo 13. Give me a go no go for launch. Capcom go, etc. etc. Always people used to wonder what Capcom meant because that's an arcade game in it. Capsule Command. But anyway, yeah, Gene Kranz rings a bell. He was the one who wore the waistcoats. And I think Jim Lovell was part of the command, was in the master control room, the mission control room for Apollo 11. And like you say, a great shame he left because he was part of that team. And then went round the moon twice and never got to land on it. Would you be upset that you went through life knowing that? I don't think so. Just think of the experiences. Just think about being at those meetings, talking at that level about rockets and all of that sort of stuff. There's a really, I don't know his name, but my favourite thing about NASA has been the Voyager missions. Nothing to do with the space race and so forth. The Voyager missions. And there was one mathematician that they hired that actually started the whole process off by finding the time on where they had to launch to get the Voyager to go through the asteroid belt and then swing through all the other planets and ellipse round their gravitational pull to get enough velocity to go past that planet and onto the next one until you got to the edge of our universe. This mathematician, I've forgotten his name, what an unsung hero he is. He actually calculated to the day and date when they needed to launch Voyager. Both Voyagers, to be quite honest. I wish I knew his name, but he was just a mathematician at like Harvard or something. But he looked like just like any other normal guy. And this guy did that. Blows my mind, just me thinking about it now. Anyway, I've talked about enough space. I've bored everybody to death, I'm sure. Question 2. What was the first thing you ever collected? Mine was probably the picture cards from UFO that you got in packets of chocolate cigarettes. They showed scenes from the show, and if you turned them over, they all formed to make one huge image. All the best, mate, and give my love to your mum. Wow, what a question, because I've always turned around and said, probably the very first adult type thing that I collected was Spider-Man comics that my dad bought me. It was Spider-Man Comic Weekly. It came out in 1974. It was 5 pence. And I've still got them. Now, it wouldn't be possibly true that is the last thing I collected. Do you remember there used to be Bazooka Joe bubblegum that used to have a comic book inside there? I'm pretty sure I would have bought them and collected those little bits of paper that were in there because they were little comic strips. But I remember that I've started and stopped with so many things like stamp collecting. I remember being at school and us using glue and sticking things down on paper that we'd drawn onto and put them up on the walls. That I did the same with the glue that you'd use to put stamps in a stamp book, and then found out that they fell out. So I stopped doing that and finding that it was really boring as well because it took an age before anybody would bring me any stamps of any worth or looked immaculate or anything. So I stopped with that. And of course, there was always freebies in Weetabix and cornflakes, ice lollies, little cards, Captain Scarlet figurines. Through my life, I've stopped and started with things. I had a Dinky collection once. I had a Corgi collection once. I had an Airfix collection once. And now I used to know the numbers. I used to collect the books, the Ladybird books, with all those stories, with those art you know, like the great big trees that are in North America that you could drive a car through, you know, all of those little ladybird books with the painted artwork on. I collected all of the fighting fantasy novels by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, and I collected all up to around about 20 something. I used to put the books in a see-through plastic case. Yeah, my God, man, I've collected, and it's all about what the next collection is going to be. Starting it off, where am I going to display it? What's it going to look like at the end? Chess sets. I've even collected chess sets through the years. Chinese ones, Korean ones, English ones, pieces made out of bone, holly, mahogany, electronic ones. Man, it goes on. What was the first thing you ever collected? I'm going to stick with the Bazooka Joe. I'm pretty sure that I had a piece of bubblegum before 1974. And so it would be probably from a sweet that I was given that I would have collected. Yeah, we'll go with that. Thanks very much and salute, my friend. And we get to Martroid. And he says, I like to rotate through my old computers and consoles every so often to make sure they all get a bit of love. One comes down from the attic for a few months, gets some use, then goes back up to make room for the next one in line. I just packed away the C64 and pulled out a box of PlayStations. Bit of a change from the usual picks, but I was really craving some Wipeout and a few other PS classics. If you're in the same boat, Del, are there any other old PlayStation games you'd be tempted to revisit? PlayStation 1 was my first foray into PlayStation because I had an Xbox when the PlayStation 2 was around, and I had the first initial day one releases. So I had Wipeout, loved that bits, and over the years I bought more games, you know, like Alien and things like that, you know, things based on movies. I don't know about going back to the PlayStation 1 and playing some classics. I had it for a certain period of time, but it wasn't a very long time, and I got far more enjoyment out of the Xbox than I did the PS1. And the one that I really got stuck into was my Dreamcast and my SNES. Probably because I was so broke, it was easy for me to get piracy working on them. And I hate to use that word, but it really was. The amount of CDs I burnt for the Dreamcast with its boot disc, and then later on putting that boot disc on the boot sector of the disc. I learned how to do that. So that was the Dreamcast. The Xbox again was you go into news groups and burning in a certain way. And the SNES, I had a Magidisc which went on the top of the cartridge. You put the cartridge in, you put a floppy drive to it, and you backed up the whole cartridge to floppy. To make it work, you did exactly the same the other way around. Just needed one cartridge of the country that you lived in. So you need an American one for one, and you need a British one for another. And then you'd load the disc in, and there you are. You were playing, I don't know, Wacky Racers or something, you know, or Mario Kart or something. So the SNES was probably the first one where I had a big collection. And that got stolen from me, unfortunately. I lent it to someone and they moved house without telling me. So I never saw that again. Shame. I'm a little bit like that, by the way, with all hardware, video recorders, all sorts of stuff I've got upstairs. Salute my friend, and we'll move to Muckman-Movies, and he's put, hi Delboy. In regards to dental health, as long as mouthwash is alcohol-free, it should be fine. I've been using alcohol-free mouthwash for years. Liking your short film reviews and gameplay, although I'd like to hear you talk more in depth about what you liked and didn't like with the film you are featuring. No need for the trailer, in my honest opinion. Well, I tell you what, I put the trailer in because I already know certain which trailers are not copyright infringed, and I noticed that so many people do gaming shorts, but they they don't talk too much about. They don't put the trailer in, is what I'm trying to say. So I thought the trailer would be unique, and that's the reason I put it in. But I totally get it. Nobody is a great action film. Oh yeah, Nobody, which is a film, is a great action film along the lines of John Wick, but with more humour. The bus scene is particularly satisfying in a violent sort of way. Take care, matey. I hope your life gets easier for you. So do I. Thank you very much, matey. I really appreciated your support over the last couple of days. I've needed it, and it's come through loud and clear. So thank you so much. And again, I'm just going to take a little break and be with you in a moment. And thanks to everybody so far who's left a comment, and we're going to get to my friend here, Colin Jones, aka Ponder. Always look forward to his. Always puts it in like a bullet point type thing. Here every week. What a nice guy. I don't think he's missed a week ever. And I feel so bad that my life is like it is at the moment, and I can't get to writing anything for him because he's on the ball with it all the time. You know, he's watching the same things on YouTube as I'm watching, and he's commenting in Discord about the same things I'm just about to comment on. It's almost like a bloody race with the guy, the bastard. I mean, it was shit. I mean, the nice guy that he is. So, but I tell you what, if you don't watch his blog or watch his the things he goes through on his bike and all that sort of stuff, you're doing yourself a disservice. Some of these people, they put things out not just because they want to put something out for themselves, but they do it for a service for us. You know, there's a lot of us out there that just don't have the time to see these things, and this is where I like what I've watched on YouTube and stuff, because I'm putting out there stuff that you might have missed, or something that you might be interested in. I hope it's a sort of a service of a type, but the reason it's there is to tell my nephew and nieces when I'm gone what I was watching. Those probably things will never be there when they want to see them. But for you guys, you get a chance to see them each week because I mentioned them in the week I've seen them. So I hope it's used. But anyway, let's read what he's put. He's got, if this gets, oh right, he's put extra, the garden waste, the bloody cheek. Yeah, that's I pay a yearly subscription to have the garden waste taken away. It's about, is it 60 quid for 10 months? Something like that. It's atrocious. So what else he's put? I'm glad we don't have snow at this time of year. Imagine trying to shovel that away in this heat. See what I mean? Always a joke in it. Yeah. I get you, mate. Yeah, cheers. You do have to be feeling up to it to live stream. I've stopped worrying about others streaming when I am in these days. I have my schedule, which is irregular but frequent and published, and I tend to stick to it. If someone wants to do an impromptu stream, then I still prioritise my own. Yeah, what I have to say about that is that mine is a consideration. It's always. It's always the fact that I mean, you got to remember that I'm the smallest of all the groups. All my friends, I am the smallest. And there is absolutely no point streaming when somebody else is. They will go to that one. But I still do them. I just avoid them. That's all. What I'm trying to say is the thing that is upsetting is if you plan something, you spend weeks planning it, you put an advert out saying you're going to do it in weeks to come, and then someone comes along that's actually knows of you and goes, you know what, I'm going to do it. Because somebody that's got 10,000 subscribers and it regularly gets 100 people that night watching, I'll have 3 people watching mine, and weeks of research down the tubes. Yeah, I'll always keep to that. I'm never going to change from that, but I'm also not worrying about it. It's just how it is. I won't be mentioning it anymore, by the way. I hope people don't bring it up. I have to answer when somebody asks a question. I wouldn't have brought that up again if it hadn't been mentioned there. It's just, that's just the way that this blog works. More prescription nonsense. It's disgraceful. Yes, it is. This is my walls in front of me that are stopping me get through life at the moment. Sounds like a bit of a bust up, but it seems to have cleared the air, so all it is a good thing. It's a good idea to keep her as active as possible for as long as possible. Sending my regards to you as always. Yeah, that was that little kerfuffle between me and my brother-in-law, because I'm sick of bringing in suggestions and them being sort of like semi-accepted. You repeat it, nothing happens. You repeat it, nothing happens. You start to repeat it again and get sick of your own voice, and then you hear the words, there's no point. It's like, have you just allowed me to continue thinking it's something that we're going to do and not do, and then we're not going to do it? And why? What is the problem with trying it once? What is the issue with it? And then to have a sort of like a threatening argument over it. I mean, this guy is pretty big, scares the hell out of me. It'd beat the shit out of me. Just then makes me feel down, and it gets me down for weeks, not days. These are things that other people may think, yeah, I get a bit animated. You get a bit animated and you scare the shit out of people for weeks, mate. You're not just causing a problem for an hour, causing a problem that I've faced all my life with people beating me up for being fat, thick, whatever. These people, if you're of a certain age, you should recognise that anything that comes out of your mouth can have an adverse effect, and I've recognised that all my life. No, I've tried to walk the line where I don't offend anybody. This is why I hate conflict. I'll avoid it like the plague. And when it occurs, I wonder to myself why I try my best to avoid a conflict. I don't want to start one. But there are things where you've got to do something, but then for someone to turn around and say, well, do it yourself then. If I could, I would. I'm here 24/7. If I had the time, I'd do it. I've got sleep deprivation. I've had a heart attack. I'm 2 weeks away from going back to that heart surgery to have tests done to see how things are. And I've had literally in the last 4 months pains here and here, which I don't talk about because I've got to talk to the physician there. If I bring that into conversation with my sister, it's just compounding something that's going on top of what's going on with my mum. We need to know that everything around my mum is fine, not other things that are going to be causing problems. And if I felt that they were going to cause a problem to my mum, I'd mention them because they could be detrimental to my mum's health. But at the moment, they're not. I'm going to see a doctor on the 11th. The 12th. So that's Tuesday. And it'll be the first time to talk about sleep deprivation in 3 years. And a year since my operation. To get to see a doctor about sleep deprivation. I mean, my God, how hard did I have to push for a 15-minute talk? Yeah, it's depressing. Don't want to talk about that anymore. The Online Safety Act is a violation of our rights. The excuse is for the protection of children. And while you've put prawn is a target, the real reason is they just can't stand us having any privacy. It's about surveillance, not protection. They don't care that it'll cause more harm, which it will, as people will use such things as dodgy VPNs that leak badly. All they care about is the stranglehold that they have over us. And I hope that came across in my answer to it, the civil liberties part, and the fact that me and Denny are definitely on the same page in regards to that. I do like that T-shirt of yours. Well, you can have it. I'll send it to you. If you give me your address, you can have that one. It was bought for me. I've worn it once. Embarrassing to watch and wear. Yours for nothing. I have a lot of funny T-shirts, but my absolute favourite has to be allergy warning may contain nuts. One, but it's quite worn out now. Oh, he's put. Well, bugger me. I watched it all by Wednesday, my blog. Wow, you did well, mate. I mean, I don't know how many people watch it all on a Sunday, but I don't care. It's something that you watch in little bits. The more times you watch it, the better. Thank you very much about the Odyssey website. I'm still copying those across. They take a bloody long time. I'm up to about blog 40, copying them across. When I've got year 1 there, I will make that live. That will be year 1 up there. And all backed up and raring to go. No changes whatsoever. All as it was 4 years ago. So there we are. Now for my question. What's a non-serious opinion you'll defend as though it's life or death? Mine would be that the toilet paper goes over the top, not round the back. Oh, right. Oh, God. I'm OTT. Wrong person to ask. I've mentioned it before. I leave as early as possible in the morning so I can park in the same space. I wash the dishes straight after cooking and then wash again straight after eating. I fold the clothes up as soon as I've ironed them and put them away. I put the knives and forks back in the same spaces that they came in. I wait 45 seconds or around that time when I'm making a cup of tea to make sure it's stewed correctly. Lids must be tightened on the biscuit barrel. Discs must be put back in their boxes and then returned to the place that it came from. My omnibuses, the big books I've got, you have to crack open the spine and fan the pages before reading the book. Oh, I've got so many, matey. It's unheard of. The routine of turning the car on is about the bloody same. Awful. Yeah. I am so anal. I've got to change my life. I can tell. Thank you and salute, my friend, and I hope anybody who's watching this does go to the description, does go and look at your channel. It's well worth them doing so. We move now to my friend Wee Bob Art, who equally has become a stalwart for me. I miss it when he's not doing something. I miss it when there's nothing here for me to read out. Just the way things are. But but yet again, I'm an hour and a half in. But this time it's bedtime as I work in the morning. I'm mid-listening to your answering my question, so I need to probably replay this. Yes, and I mentioned some more twin shooters. And I bought one for 72 pence this week. And I purposely went back to your channel and wrote down, it's 72 pence right now, matey, go and get it. And if you were an actual friend of mine on Steam, I'd have bought it for you. In fact, I bought it for several people. I bought it for... who did I buy it for? I bought it for Steve. I bought it for Alan Mainmeister. A couple of others. 72 pence. I mean, my God. And I don't know how long it was going to last for. But it's a brilliant little game. So I hope you got that. You carry on. I do love the Ian and Dell Wednesday. And although I have not managed along, I always watch on the replay, but try to skip spoilers where possible. Anyway, I may comment again, I may not. So let's just go for a question for now. I watched The Secret Life of Chuck this weekend, which was an interesting movie and worth a watch. However, I must warn you, it has dancing in it. Weirdly, it is another Stephen King adaptation. He must have the most books to TV movie conversions of any writer. What would you rate as your top Stephen King movie TV adaptation? Oh, easy. And we mentioned it earlier on. Salem's Lot. Every time. And it's the David Soul one, the Tobe Hooper directed one from the 1970s, which was in 2 parts when I saw it on BBC, and it's got Jeffrey Hughes in it, and James Mason, and David Soul, and the beats that are in that film just keep me intrigued. I know exactly what's coming up, but the beats when they appear in the film are just so on par that I can't help but get to the end of the first part and start the second part straight away, making it a 3-hour film. The remakes have come nowhere near what they are. But, you know, if it isn't Salem's Lot, I am enamoured with Creepshow. I've bought Creepshow so many times, it's unbelievable. I've bought it on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K. I've got it on steelbook, slipcover. It goes on and on and on. I've bought the comic book adaptation. That came in actually one of the Laserdiscs I bought as well. I bought a copy of the actual book, the comic book itself, as it is in the movie, where you see the pages skip over. Oh yeah, Creepshow would be there, but I've equally liked things like Christine, one that doesn't get mentioned too much, Thinner. I love those. They're more Twilight Zone type stories, expanding. I mean, we've mentioned the Running Man in my shorts that I do, my film shorts. He's done under pseudonym names Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, 2 classic films. Yeah, I agree with you. He's done so many adaptations. Salem's Lot is always at the top. I don't think that'll ever change, you know. So there we go. And, oh, by the way, that's the end of all of the comments. So we might go straight into watched on YouTube. Doing well this week. Hopefully I've got some good stuff in here. You know, we start with the actual title watched on YouTube, which is the general stuff. And you know, there are 4 things in there that I watch religiously every week, and that is This Week in Retro, Techmoan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. Do make a note of those. What they offer to me there's a variety on the things that I love. So we've got This Week in Retro, which is all about retro. So, of course, they had things like Fun and Challenges Keeping Up with the Commodore is one of the titles. Let's Go Back to Where It All Began is another title. And The Computer Phone. Yes. So it was quite interesting this week. They mentioned, of course, the Commodore 64 Black Mini, which was released, launched, or should I say announced this week, which is basically just the Mini again. It's just the Commodore 64 Mini again, this time in black, but it's got 25 titles on there that are brand spanky new, like homebrew games that never sort of like saw a commercial release back in the day in the 80s. Do you see what I mean? So they're sort of like more top end. The programmers know what the tips and tricks are of the Commodore 64 to get the most out of it. Things like Sam's Journey and a number of others. And the cost of those alone, if you go to the websites where you can buy them from, makes the value of that Mini probably worthwhile for you to buy again. All depends on whether you go down a piracy route or not. But for me, I only bought the full-size Commodore 64. I never bought the Mini. So I might buy the Black Mini. Because the cost of those games would total the cost of what the mini console is. So it's a good way of getting those. Techmoan, he did a review of a Sony PS-FL99 vinyl record player with unique digital features. Yeah, this record player had a drive mechanism that pulled the whole tray out, a bit like a Laserdisc. And you put the record in, and it pulled it back in. A scanner at the top scanned the lines that are on the record to work out where the track starts were. And therefore, you could tell it to play track 4 on the record player, and the arm would go across and do it. Absolutely fantastic. He bought it from Japan. There are many other styles that you can get of that particular type of player. But this one was a Sony, and it's one that he really, really wanted. It was one of the top of the ranges at the time. And it was just intriguing. He took it to bits, noticed about the drive mechanism, some of the things that were needed, sort of like realignment, like the sensor on the scanner and so forth in it. So that was good. Really enjoyed that. That was 45 minutes of pure bliss for me. Nothing again from the Gadget Show, but chronologically gaming. He's far from going back to the way he was, because he used to do 5 live sessions a week. He's now doing 1 plus a backlog of 1. So he does 1 that's December 1982, continuing to move forward. But he then does 1 later on in the week, which is to do with games that he missed in 1976 when he was back there before. And that's because things have changed. Some things like videos have turned up, or you can now play it on MAME or whatever. So that's good. That's worth it. So outside of those 4, I bought something called Analog Toys. That was another YouTube channel, Analog Toys. Forgotten Toys of the 1970s. So, yeah, some of it was forgotten, some of it wasn't. I had some of it. Especially the robot at the end with the interchangeable arms. I had that. So that was quite nice. Moving on, we had Extinct Planet. What? And the question is, what existed before dinosaurs? The origin of life on Earth. Just, I love sometimes these little documentaries. I can watch them all day long. And, you know, it talked about fish and how they came along. One cell, you know, one cell creatures that then expanded, turned into amphibians. Our planet split apart. The amount of apocalypse we've had with asteroids hitting us in those early billion years stages is immense. So that was great. And another one that's not done by the same people, which was called Extinct Planet, was about spiders. I don't think I've got that one written down, unfortunately. No, I don't. But if you put deadly spiders during the dinosaur era, you'll come across it. That was great. Then we got to Cinemassacre. Cinemassacre is that angry guy. He inspired me in ways to start doing a YouTube channel. But that was more Alan than anything from Mainmeister. But he was one of the go-to YouTube stalwarts that I used to have, because he used to take the piss out of games, and I used to like that. After that, there's Animated Earth, the insane emulation of spiders. Yeah, so that's what that one is. So I did write it down. Yeah, stupid me. So that's Animated Earth. Matt Dredder did The Fall of New Line Cinema. I like to watch some of these ones where it's the film distributor that's in the spotlight, how they managed their company, what they were doing at full tilt of what had come out, and what happened when they died a death. So that's good. I mean, New Line Cinema did the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You'd think they'd still be around now, but they went. And I think that's it. So that's watched on YouTube, and we'll go to films, TV, and soundtrack on YouTube after I just take this little break to get some fresh water on my face. I do apologise. And my life gets worse because when I went away to splash myself with water, hit the stop button, not the pause. So I've got to do a join now. Great. That'll delay things a little bit more. But there we go. Let's get on to film, TV, and soundtracks on YouTube. So there's, of course, Ian Hill, The Ramblings. He did top 5 comedy films 2018 to 2025, I think he's got to. Yeah, I've got to read my writing. He did a review of Doctor Who Mysterious Planet, and he did an X-Files Season 4 Episode 15 review. Both very entertaining. The Mysterious Planet, obviously, is the first story in the trial of a Time Lord. So very, very interested to watch the beginning of that one, because it will start talking about the Valiard and so forth, which is very important key part of that description. And of course, I think, if I remember rightly, when the trial, the actual images came from the Panopticon. I think. Anyway, I have to go think back to that one. You're making me think already, Ian. And of course, he did a live with me on Wednesday, which went swimmingly. We had great fun, talked about everything. We were talking about Salem's Lot, as mentioned by Denny, and a number of other things about cinema and so forth. Because I don't know if you've noticed at the moment, but everything, and I do mean this quite literally, is very negative in regards to Hollywood and films at the moment. One moment they're talking about a new film that's coming out that's going to be an absolute monster of a hit, like Fantastic Four, and then the next week it's the worst thing that they ever did, and it's lost more money than it's ever going to get, and basically it's a disaster for Marvel, even though it's a great film. The box office is fiddly. We have to understand here that not only has a film got a budget, it's got a marketing budget. It's designed so that once it's finished with, it's on streaming service, and you've got holes in the year where you can specifically put your films. Now, Marvel specifically stated it was going to be close to the end of July. I think that was a bad mistake. Could have done it even further. You could have done it August. Could have done it, earlier in July. But the problem is, there were three AAA class movies in that month, and the Fantastic Four was probably the last one. And we're in a recession. People haven't got money to go and go to the pictures 3 times in 1 month. unless you're part of a cinema club. You alienated an awful lot of your audience because people just haven't got the money these days. They're probably now going to watch that on streaming. Well, that will get revenue in, I suppose, for Disney Plus for a short period of time, but then they'll leave after they've seen the film. They'll buy it on physical media anyway, so there's another reason why you don't actually have to go, because you've already got your 65-inch screen with surround sound and so forth, so going to the cinema seems a bit of a waste. And of course, cinema prices are so high. And out of those cinema releases, Hollywood only gets something like 20%. So the international markets then becomes very important. And if there's a recession in there as well, you got a problem. So yeah, we debated an awful lot in the live that was in there on Wednesday. Thank you very much. My salute to you, sir. Then we've got Playtendoguy. He did a rant about cinema etiquette, because he went to the pictures a couple of times, and each time, apart from once, I think, he had a bad experience with people talking all the way through the film, taking selfies, all of this sort of stuff. Unheard of when I was going to the cinema. A selfie, taking a mobile with a camera to take a picture, that had been taken off of your hands in a possibility as a recording device to get the film and then put it on the internet so nobody came and saw it. Yeah, bloody mess, to be quite honest. So that was an interesting watch from my mate Pete, Playtendoguy. You got Josh Through the Lens. He did a review of something called Sorry Baby, which he thinks is the best film you've probably never heard of. So I'm interested in that one myself, so I've written it down as something I need to check up on. Did You See That is the next one, and he's one I've watched because, well, basically since nearly the early beginning. But you know, it's interesting always to watch his channel. Because you're going to learn things about not only films, but he also does diversity into some of his holidays and what he's doing there. This week he did 10 facts about Back to the Future you may never know. Probably not, because I know an awful lot. I've been on the ride and all of that sort of stuff. The Back to the Future ride in Florida and in California. It being one of my favourite films, I probably doubt that I don't know the things he's mentioned. You've got Muckman-Movies, who did a July movie pickup. So Muckman-Movies is brilliant. He does film reviews, and he did one of Superman and Bring Her Back. 2 hot films at the moment at the cinema. And, you know, it's just interesting to know what's going on in life in the cinema. You got Movie Collector. Now, this was an interesting one because sometimes something bites at you to actually watch. One of them is that, the Alien box set that was on Laserdisc. I've got that, and I've got the Aliens as well, which was another Laserdisc on 4 sides that did incredibly well at the box set, plus extras. So that's brilliant. Started my Laserdisc of Star Trek movies. That did. And then we got Jim Jam movies. Last one. I think I've got a Monday rant. I think that's what it says. It's all to do with taking drugs during a party and being guilty about it. So that's brilliant. And I'll be back in a moment. I'm going to check my mum, and then that'll be the end of this blog. Will be a moment. So I had to go for a longer period of time because my mother's not very well. So I'm not quite sure where I got to. So if I am going to repeat myself now, I do apologise. But I won't go back too far. So I'm going to go back to the point where I was talking just past Did You See That? And we'll go to Muckman-Movies, who's done some July pickups. And he also went to the cinema and did a little review of Bring Her Back and Superman movies that are out this month. Bring Her Back, I'm actually very interested in. Superman, obviously, just because it's part of my childhood and watching Christopher Reeve and all that sort of stuff. But Bring Her Back sort of like gives me that itch for a horror film for me to watch. So thanks to Muckman-Movies for doing those, because I was very interested in what he had to say. Movie Collector, he did the unusual of showing a Laserdisc, which he doesn't do very often, and it was Alien. Now, I've got that particular box set. In fact, I've even got the follow-up Aliens, and they're part of my quintessential, oh my god, I'll probably never get rid of editions. Come in a hard case, done in a particular format where it's on 4 sides. I think it's angular velocity, CAV. And the extras disc is just sublime because it's got the whole script and photos. Absolutely brilliant. It was one of my most expensive discs that I bought at that particular time. So it was great to see Movie Collector show that off. And then we've got Jim Jam Movies and TV, my friend who I've met in Birmingham. He did a Monday rant about checking your discs. Very important because he bought some from a charity shop and somebody had scratched words on the other side of the disc. And although you bought them for 20 pence, it's still not etiquette, is it, to give to your charity discs that they can't sell because they're scratched to buggery. What was the point of taking them in there? Absolute waste of time, unless they were done in the shop at the time and they were like that when they were handed in. He also did a little bit of a roundabout sort of like video where he was on holiday and decided to take us round on his little holiday trip. I think it was to Southend, not sure. But you better watch that. That was worth watching. So we get to the last page, which is Game and Tech YouTube, which is mostly all my friends that are in Discord and I've known for years, and is more to do with the technology side of things. And we've got Down the Rabbit Hole, Kevin, my friend who's in Canada. He did Naked Gun review. That's the new 2025 Liam Neeson one, not Leslie. And he thought that Hollywood is getting there in regards to making comedies again, and I'd probably agree, but I have reservations because the script really was in places not funny. Something I wouldn't say about a Zucker Brothers film, which is what the original Police Files was done by. He also did another of his Star Frontiers mini debates, and this time it was in regards to medikits and how you use them. So all of it is really pretty good. Salute, my friend, and we'll move to Equal Royalty, which is Robert's Retro Gaming. Like I say, I'm not worthy. He's from Canada. There's lots of Atari stuff, but here we go. This is what he did this week. He did Minecraft Play, episodes 153 and 154, No Man's Sky, episode 52, Spectrum's copy of Arkanoid, and Atari 8-Bit Hijack, the Lunar Lander ship. So that was pretty good. Enjoyed that. He also did one called Jungle Trouble today, which I've been watching a little bit of. Haven't watched it all, so I can't really comment, but it looks like a very interesting game. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And we move to Steve's Gaming Part 2, who, as you know, had to change his name on his YouTube because his email was deleted. He's now moved over to Twitch and he's put a couple of streams up, some 64, some BBCB. He's done Attic Attack on the BBCB. I remember seeing that. So that's definitely worth having a look and seeing the new experience of going to that platform, should I say. Just couldn't understand why I couldn't remember that word. We moved to 20th Century Gaming, who did a Commodore 64 live stream of episode 17, But yesterday he did another one quite late at night, which was episode 3 of Zap, where he played most of the gold awards. Absolutely marvellous. We've got Colin Jones, aka Ponder, who did a Tubers High Score channel, 3 of 3. I'm hoping that works out for you, Brian. What was that? So I heard a noise that was going on in the background there. So we did 20th Century Gaming, did Colin Jones, and there's LFG Gamer and Vlogs. I haven't seen a blog from him for a long time. And he talked just about everything. Football, of course, at first. Then some pickups. Some behavioural things that we do all as kids and as adults. Very worth entertaining on that. And that comes to the conclusion, therefore, of the written word. And we can look at the overhead cam and have a little look at some of the things that have arrived this week. So let's get the overhead cam sorted. Ooh, right, there we go. Hopefully you can see this. So this one is Cary Grant and Grace Kelly in Alfred Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief. It's a beautiful looking steelbook. I love Hitchcock, absolutely marvellous. Wasn't terrifically expensive, so don't worry too much about that. Then you've got Zombie Flesh Eaters, which is a deluxe packaging one. Definitely worth your attention if you haven't done so already. And then the final one is Thunderbolts, a Marvel one, which they said was on the right direction for Marvel to get some good money this year. Now that position has changed slightly once they've seen the Fantastic Four on stage. And that's it. So I'm going to go to new camera and just wind this up. It's been a bit of a weird week, a bit of venting, a bit of rubbish, all that sort of stuff. But I love my blog and I'll continue to do it as long as I can. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to say salute and goodbye to you now. Until the next time. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.